So I've had this sitting in my basket full of practice sketches and painting for several months now. The painting is just okay, but I like the experience of painting it way more than the result. I learned a lot from it, and that's what I'll show you today. So let's do this. I was a little nervous showing up to a painting event with pencils. I was afraid I wouldn't fit in amongst a bunch of oil painters, especially knowing that they hired a model to sit for some of those amazing portrait artists. There are plenty of landscape artists here too, and landscapes are what I like to paint the most, so things are looking good, and when I got set up I started to feel right at home. Except I'm not a traditional painter. I use pencils. Can a guy like me fit in at an event like this? We'll see. That scratchy sound is because the texture on this artboard is a sandy texture. It's a 5x7-inch Ampersand pastel board, and I'm using Derwent Inktense pencils to block in the major shapes and colors of this painting. Inktense is a water-soluble ink that's a lot like watercolor, but it's a bit more intense in its saturation. This isn't the first time I painted tulips using these pencils on this type of surface. I even did a video about it last year. And if you've seen that previous video, I learned that it doesn't make any sense to do details at this early stage of a painting. The only thing you really want to do is get the major shapes and the composition right. That's why I'm doing the sky blue and why I'm going to fill in those trees with some green. I was attracted to this particular scene because of the tree by this bridge. It was a beautiful tree and I liked it. As you can see, my view had a view of people in it. That's to be expected at a popular place. I thought about leaving one of them in, but I decided against it and removed them altogether. That's why painting can be more fun than photography. From a perspective standpoint, I loved how this flower-lined stream leads the viewer into the picture toward the main focal point of the bridge and big tree. In person, that bigger tree on the left wasn't really in my view since it actually sits further back than it looks here. Cameras tend to mess with perspective. That's another reason I like to sketch and paint outside. It's so much different than looking at photos. The trees in the distance will be a little bit lighter green than the foreground trees, but for now I'm still focusing on the big masses of colors, so the trees are one big shape. And I'll do subsequent layers of more paint on the things in the foreground to separate them from the things in the background. You can see that these Inktense pencils really blend well from those initial scribbly marks I made. With experience, you kind of know how much to put down and what it'll look like when you wet it, but again, that only comes with lots of practice, and that's what I need to do, is practice, practice, practice. I know that I'll be able to put details over the top of this block of tangerine color. That's the good thing about the sanded surface. You don't really have to worry too much about saving the white of the paper for highlights. The light colors can go over the dark colors to an extent. I mean, I definitely want to get the local colors right, and the brightest colors of the flower bed match the tangerine color I'm using. And I'll carve out the negative space of the flowers, stems, and leaves with darker green, and I'll try to add some dirt with brown, and maybe some yellow for variety, possibly to represent those rocks along the stream. Now that I have the painting fully blocked in, I want to finish off the sky. I flipped the board over because I wanted the blue to kind of run down. Where the paint collects, it is darker. Since I can't make water run uphill, flipping it over is an okay trick. I do this because the sky is lighter near the horizon and darker as you go up. Once it's sort of dry, I can flip it back over and it should stay put. Now to reintroduce that bridge in front of that tree, along with the trunk of the tree. I still consider this the underpainting stage, and I'm just trying to establish where my dark colors will be. I'll be using non-water soluble pencils in a bit, and those are less forgiving, so that's why I like to work out the composition and value structure with a more fluid and abstract underpainting. It's quicker, and the fluidity makes for some happy accidents that sometimes adds to the overall feel of the painting. I do feel like I'm still learning how to paint, and it'll be clear by the end of this video that I'll make some mistakes, but I'm also doing some things that work well. That might be why I was a little nervous showing up at this event. There were so many talented artists here. But I did it anyway, and I share these videos because I talk to a lot of people that say they wish they could paint, but they don't feel like they have enough talent. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think it's about talent. I heard a quote by Bob Ross that talent is simply a pursued interest. I wholeheartedly agree. If you're interested enough to keep practicing, you will get better. And I hope I keep learning. This is just one way to approach a painting, and this happens to be the way I'm trying it today. If it helps give you some ideas with what you might try in your art, cool. I'm glad to keep sharing. My whole goal with this channel is to explore and discover new art techniques, as well as experience new places and people. Anyway, you can see that the water blended out those scribbles pretty well. I guess the reason I scribble is because I'm trying really hard not to get hung up on the details yet. But I'm getting there. At this point, I can see I need to darken up this grass area, so I'm putting another layer of green over it. I have to remember that it lightens up a bit as it dries after I wet it, so I'll go over it a few more times before I'm done. Perhaps I could have laid down more pigment to start with this, but I'm a little too tentative on that for some reason. Part of this experience is observing what I'm seeing and trying to translate to the canvas with the tools I have. That's not necessarily an easy task, and it feels like each painting is a learn-as-you-go exercise. That's okay. The colors for the flowers need to be darker too, especially the ones closer to me. So, like the grass, I add another layer of the Inktense color. This time it's deep rose pink. And now it's finally time to move on from the loose underpainting stage and start adding some detail. I'm also switching to holding the box on my lap rather than on the easel. For the rest of the painting, I'm going to use non-water soluble pencils, and the painting will become a lot more like drawing, so it's good to have the canvas in a more controlled position. Since drawing is a much slower process, I'm going to speed up the footage a bit, but you'll still be able to see how I build up the shapes and contrasting values. I'm not going to skip much. I'm going to see how I can build up the shapes and contrasting values to bring out the flowers and trees from this seemingly abstract painting. Stay with me, and you'll see that even at 5x speed, painting and drawing can take patience. But it's totally worth it, and it's a really nice experience. So sit back and relax and enjoy the view, and I'll have more to say in a minute or two. This time I'm trying to darken the grass while leaving some texture. Trying a grass lawn is kind of hard. Those mountains in the distance do kind of look like a light bluish purple. Drawing the stems and leaves of the flowers is what I meant by carving them out. More on that later. This really is a pretty view, isn't it? Starting to get some good form on these trees by adding shadows on the bottom and lights on the top. I'm liking how this bridge and tree are becoming a focal point. And this painting is starting to get a little less abstract and more realistic looking. As you can see, there were a lot of folks going by throughout the day, and some of them stopped to ask questions or comment, like this woman with her kind words.
You've done this before.
Yeah.
Is this your passion?
Yes.
Art?
Well, it's my hobby.
It's your...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's not my day job.
It's not your day job?
No.
But I'm just telling her, this could be so relaxing.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Just to be outdoors and
Yeah.
how fun.
Yeah.
So you like
I use pencils. I have water soluble underneath to kind of get the started, and then I just draw over it.
Oh my goodness.
It's a little quicker.
Well, and this gal down here's got chalk pencils. I've never seen chalk in a pencil.
Yeah.
It's just magical what you can do.
Yeah, it's cool.
Anyway,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Hearing that there are other people with pencils and pastels and different mediums helped me remember that there's not just one way to do art. And even though I initially thought I might be out of place here, I knew that I actually wasn't. Art is art, and I have just as much right to enjoy painting outside as anybody else, and I can use whatever materials I like to use. And so can you. Drawing is a fun activity, and it is my hobby. I can see that I've improved over the years, and I want to continue to get better at it. Giving myself challenges like this is a good way to make sure I practice. There are several non-water soluble pencils I've been using on this painting. Mainly they are the Derwent drawing pencils, which are a little thicker and softer, and the colors are mainly earth tones. For the brighter and more saturated colors, Derwent Chroma Flow and Color Soft. For these flowers, I'm adding a variety of colors along with those pops of white, and they're my way of trying to make the flowers pop out without actually needing to draw every last petal. More people walk by and say they like my painting, but in my mind, I'm not done yet.
Oh my goodness, that is so pretty.
Thank you.
You're really talented.
Thanks. It's fun to do.
It is. My little girl loves painting too, and the other lady is like, "Oh, come, I'll give you some."
Nice.
Yeah, she was super excited.
Even though this is sped up and it obviously looks like I'm working quickly, I actually am trying to draw quickly. And now I'm back to easel mode. It's still on my lap, but I wanted to be able to have it up closer to my line of sight. And these impressionistic strokes are full of color now, and I'm moving quickly. I'm thinking about one thing only: how to get what I'm seeing and feeling out on the canvas in the best way that I know how. In fact, I didn't even notice that I still have a rubber band around my pencil. In these final stages, I'm trying to boost the contrast up and have really dark darks and really bright brights, which is how I'm trying to build the shadows of those rocks along the stream. I like to keep my strokes impressionistic, and while I'm more detailed now than I was early on with the Inktense and water, I like to allow for scribbly strokes. I think it makes things a bit more interesting, and I guess you could say a part of my style. People talk a lot about having a style. I think it's more about what comes naturally to you than anything else. As you've seen, scribbling kind of comes naturally to me, and I try to do it in a way that makes sense. I like the spontaneity of it, and sometimes it can get out of control, and I have to slow it down a bit, but sometimes not. And as this painting started to get a little less abstract and more realistic looking, I started to get excited on how it was turning out, and this really was a good experience. And it was nice to hear comments from passerbys like this one. Hey.
Hello. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm kind of just an amateur, but it's fun.
So am I. But that's how you get to where you're going.
Yeah, you have to practice, right?
Yeah, I agree.
It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
This has been a really nice experience. And even though I'm not the best artist in the world, who cares? I know it doesn't really matter how good I think I am or bad I think I am. I just know that I really enjoy the process. And once we were done, we were asked to set up our paintings in a central place for viewing. And even a silent vote happened for the people's favorites. It was kind of fun to stand back and watch people pass by or go up and take a closer look. I enjoyed looking at other paintings as well, and I saw a few that I was more than happy to vote for. And when I wrapped it up, I took some final shots of the area and ended on this good note.
What you see in this bridge and the tree are so fun to see what you focused on.
Thanks for watching and exploring art with me. I'll see you in the next video.